The Sports Source is brought to you by Fast Frame with Heather Whiteside art now available.
You are watching East Tennessee's first and only year-round sports talk show on television. This is The Sports Source with your host, John Pennington.
Happy New Year. Welcome into 2017 here on The Sports Source. We appreciate you joining us on this live New Year's Day. We've never done a show live on New Year's Day, and I'm feeling the effects of staying up on New Year's Eve. We have plenty to talk about. We got Tennessee recruiting, we got Tennessee basketball, and of course, Tennessee football after the big win in the Music City Bowl. How big was the win? We'll discuss all that. Let's just dive right in. First segment of our program brought to you by Tennova Healthcare. You know, I have a family member who was waiting on some test results after going through a summer of radiation treatment. His appointment wasn't until January to find out the results, but the folks at Tennova, they got those results, and they figured he shouldn't have to wait for good news. So they call him, and they let him know, and it made for a happier holiday, I can assure you. That's the kind of care I talk about when I talk about Tennova. You go to Tennova, you're not just a number. They do a tremendous job of caring for you, not only your body, but your mind. Tennova.com. All right, want to welcome in the first round of panelists, and we have 3 VFLs and a former Vol coach that are all waiting to come out here too as well. Bob Hodge, Josh Ward, Mike Strange, Chuck Cavaleris. Tennessee wins 38-24 over a Nebraska team they'd never beaten before. Music City Bowl win wraps up a 9-4 season. I want to touch on some of the bullet points. We got about a minute on each of these, so jump right in. There we go. We'll get right into it. Josh Dobbs had a proper exit, I thought. You look at those numbers, 23 of 38 passing, 291 yards passing, 1 passing touchdown. Could have been 4. He had 2 dropped that should have been caught, and 1 that would have been a good catch in the end zone that Jennings let hit the ground, but could have had 4 touchdowns. 11 carries, 118 yards rushing. They couldn't stop him on the ground. 3 rushing touchdowns. On the year, 3,777 total yards or yards of total offense. That's 13 shy of the UT record. If any of those 3 catches that were dropped were caught, he holds the single season record for yardage. Guys, your thoughts on Josh Dobbs?
Build him a statue.
Build him a statue.
And put it in front of the engineering building. Because I think that people never quite appreciated Josh Dobbs for what he brought to Tennessee. I don't think Tennessee's 9-4 if you don't have a Josh Dobbs-like quarterback.
Agreed, yeah.
By any stretch of the imagination. And I think people just need to realize before the season, you asked the question, how would Josh Dobbs be remembered? And he needs to be remembered as one of Tennessee's all-time greats. On the field, off the field. So build him a statue, put it in front of the engineering building.
Thoughts on Josh Dobbs?
Statue.
Just looking at that one game, if you take what his running out of that game, that's a dogfight. I mean, that game is Nebraska could have won that game, but Josh Dobbs he's a difference maker.
What else can you ask from a quarterback, and especially with all the pressure of your final game, and to go out there and perform like he performed, and like you're saying, if they'd have had a couple of more catches, he gets the total offense record. I just don't think you can ask any more. And yes, he is very, very, I think, underappreciated, and will be more appreciated as time goes on.
If he had played in an era before social media, he would be one of the biggest heroes in the history of Tennessee. You know, if Condredge Holloway, for example, a running quarterback, had played in the day of Twitter where people would say, well, that third down pass he missed. But you don't get that with Condredge Holloway. You just remember the big plays. Man, that guy was great.
Right.
Someday it'll be that way with Dobbs, but he was hurt by the social media effect, and all players are today.
The little
it's a
things
different
get
deal.
blown up now.
Yes.
More than ever.
Yeah, and his big things should be more remembered than the negative things. I had somebody tweet me the other day about, no, I don't want him to break Manning's record. This is during the game. I said, why? Well, I never liked him. He's not that good. Like, well, the fact that he's within 10 yards of Manning kind of suggests he is pretty good. And the guy said, well, maybe I just don't like the offense. But anyway, Derek Barnett breaks Reggie White's his career sack mark at Tennessee. He does it late in the game, kind of thanks to a defensive interference call that helped sustain the drive for Nebraska and give Barnett more chances. The team went nuts when he got the record. Butch Jones had to take a timeout because everyone was going out on that field regardless. Thoughts on Derek Barnett, Josh?
He should have been a team captain this year. He was a guy that led Tennessee through a lot of the season, and the way that the players reacted, the whole sideline tells you how much respect there was for Derek Barnett. It makes me wonder why something wasn't done in the middle of the season when they're looking for leadership. But Derek's an all-time player in Tennessee history, no doubt.
Yeah. I mean, and I think that Reggie White, if you go back in the last half century, there's two guys from Tennessee that are just above and beyond everybody else, Peyton Manning and Reggie White. And so I think that's what makes that record even more impressive. It's not just that he got the record, it's who he took the record from and did it in just 3 years.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, to do it in 3 years. And granted, it is a different day and age.
Yeah.
He faced more passes. The games, you got an extra game. Bowl stats count.
More
Still,
snaps.
if you gave him 4 years, which White had, he'd still break the record. Yeah. I mean, that's pretty impressive. The one thing, back to Dobbs, we look at Barnett. Barnett got his record. Would have liked to have seen UT's coaches give Dobbs some extra carries late, because a couple extra carries and he's got 12 yards. They should have. He earned that
if
career
they were
mark,
aware of it.
that
If they
season
were
mark.
aware
If
of it.
they were aware
of it.
Well, you would think so, but I don't know. But I don't know.
Defense allowed 24 points, but 7 of those came off a special teams fumble deep in UT territory. Overall, just 318 yards allowed, just 2.2 yards per rush. Huge improvement. Northwestern is missing 2 stars, but Tennessee was also missing 3 defensive tackles and Jalen Reeves-Maben. Thoughts on the defensive improvement? Total shift.
I just thought you can say what you want about Nebraska not being an offensive powerhouse, but Tennessee lined up better and tackled better.
And it felt like Tom healed a lot of wounds, too. I mean, they did know where they were supposed to be, but I think the tackling and practices and some of the practices.
Hitting in practice.
And getting that ready, you really saw it pay off on the field.
And one other quick thing, when Nebraska had a big drive for a touchdown, they got 2 big plays. Tennessee had started that series with a bunch of backups in there.
Right. On the long run.
And boom. By the time they got the starters back in.
You know, Will Overstreet pointed out on one of our, forget if it was this preview show or the Fox preview show we did, but he pointed out on one of those shows that what he wanted to see out of the Bob Shoop defense was, is there confusion? If there's still confusion, then you got worries going into 2017. If there's not confusion, then it kind of suggests your problems were injuries and other things that can be corrected. I didn't see any confusion, so I think that's a bright spot for the defense and their performance the other day.
I thought also a good sign for culture that's been discussed over the last couple of weeks, right? Did they want it? And it appeared they did, the way that they played, the way that they were motivated to help Derek Barnett get that record. And after the game, Riker Fife, the quarterback for Nebraska, said, yeah, he had a bunch of sacks. So that tells you how disruptive Derek Barnett was as well, that the quarterback thought that he was sacked several times by Derek Barnett, just once.
The culture thing, you and I talked about this. I don't doubt that there were issues inside that team with chemistry. But when you look at all the guys who came back last year, why would you come back if the culture is a disaster? You look at schools where guys said, I'm not playing this game. Or some guys play it taking full half speed. You had a bunch of guys who didn't have to play in this game for Tennessee, and they did, and they went all out. I think that says a lot about the whole culture is a disaster thing.
Well, I mean, just look at Jonathan Kongbo and the way he played in that game. 5 weeks ago, people were saying he's out of here, he's done, he hates it. Didn't look like a kid. He looked like a kid having fun.
And now he's tweeting about how we're looking forward to 2017, working with his
clearly
teammates.
played with energy and enthusiasm.
Last, I'll just say this, we don't have much time. I kept thinking throughout the game, run Dobbs more. And I still think you'd have an easier time if you'd just run Dobbs. I don't know why you didn't run Dobbs more than you did, because a lot of his runs were escapes on his own. There weren't many design runs. Those that there were went for touchdowns or for 30 yards. At the same time, it's kind of like the season. You sat there and went, okay, why didn't you use this guy more? Why didn't you use that guy? Well, they're average 36 points a game. Well, here you are. You look down, you scored 38. You had 500 yards of offense. Put those 3 touchdowns that were dropped on the board, you got 50 points, and you've got 700 yards of offense. So as much as I thought Dobbs could have run the ball more, hard to complain. It's going to be interesting, though, next year. You don't have Dobbs. So what does the offense look like, and who's running it? But anyway, that was one thing that I kept saying, run him. It's there. They can't stop him. It's 10 yards a pop. And then you look at the end of the numbers and say, okay, well,
And it's
hard to
amazing
complain.
how he is that elusive.
It's incredible.
Time after time after time. I mean, it really is. I don't know how you explain that.
I thought he was clear. His legs were clearly your best weapon this year, and I don't know that I would have run him a lot more than they did, but they kept him healthy.
He put Tennessee's offense on his back a lot of times this season, earlier in the year in big games, and he drove them through a lot of the game against Nebraska.
All right, the Vols failed to live up to preseason hype. No way around it. Failed to meet that goal of winning the East and getting to Atlanta. That's disappointing. But in terms of a letter grade, not just a pass-fail grade, in terms of a letter grade, what do you put on this season? We're going to list some of the accomplishments, take a look at this team, and get everybody's take. F, A, B, C, D, we got the grades. Come on back.